Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Now today we're going to be taking a look at something a bit special. And when I say special, I mean special. Today we're going to be taking a look at the 5th anniversary limited edition Bazooka H-pattern shifter from BDH Racing Hardware. Now it's special because there's only going to be 250 of these 5th anniversary shifters made. So this is the third shifter that I've looked at from BDH. In August 2022, I checked out the original Bazooka shifter and I liked it that much that I actually bought one. Then in 2024, I had a look at the H1 SQ, which is a combined H pattern and sequential shifter. But BDH have made a few changes to the original Bazooka and they asked me if I wanted to take a look. I'm hardly going to say no when I'm a huge fan of the previous shifters. And this is the 5th anniversary shifter because BDH are 5 years old. But before we dive in any further, the necessary disclaimer. BDH have sent me this unit to test and use, so I haven't paid for it, but I'm not affiliated in any way, shape or form with BDH. I don't have any affiliate links, I don't have any discount codes for you guys, so if you buy one of these shifters, I don't receive a penny. This isn't a sponsored video. Now, I've got to say, I'm a bit sick and tired of having to say that, but if you don't, people assume somehow that you're on the payroll. And even though I've said the disclaimer, people will still think that. So I might as well not bother. So BDH was formed by Dave Hunter. Now Dave is an engineer by trade, a proper car bloke who's raced cars or been around race cars most of his life. Now during lockdown, his friends asked him if he could come up with a shifter for them to use, and the original Bazooka was born. Now that was made with the intention of replicating the feel of a real race car just for Dave and his friends to use, so it wasn't engineered to be sold to the public. They just wanted a proper shifter. So I'll give you some information about the 5th anniversary shifter and some of the more significant differences to the original. Now, like the original Bazooka, it's a 7-speed with a reverse made from billet aluminium. But as you can see, this 5th anniversary edition is anodized in black. The old Bazooka used a pretty generic circuit board with micro switches, but this has now been replaced with BDH's own bespoke circuit board with hall sensors. Now each shifter has its own USB identity to prevent conflicts with any other hardware, so in theory you could actually run 2 of these shifters on the rig at the same time. If anybody does that, I need to see a video. So the gates for the gears has been upgraded from nylon to steel, and the selector forks have been tuned and optimized. Now the version I've got here has got a standard USB Type A cable, but if you buy one, it should arrive to you with a USB-C connector on the shifter, which means that if you wanted to, you could swap the cable for a longer one if you needed to. So it comes with a mounting bracket, making it super easy to attach to your rig, and the Allen bolts on top of the clamps can be loosened and you can rotate the shifter so you can side mount it. So I've got mine bottom mounted on the rig just so you can actually see the shifter properly in the video. But my preferred mounting option would be on the side mount, just inside of the side rail. So when I look at a piece of hardware, I look at it as if I'm going to buy it with my own money and break it down usually into 4 simple categories: looks, build quality, performance, and value for money. So firstly, let's talk about looks. Now, this is a hefty bit of kit. It doesn't look like any other shifter on the market. Now, personally, I'm a huge fan of that industrial look with sim racing gear. So I like to see that exposed aluminium. But saying that, the black one looks pretty incredible when paired with the black rig. So as far as looks goes, I'm a fan, but I was a fan of the original and the general design. Now, onto build quality, which is absolutely superb. So these are all hand assembled by BDH right here in the UK. The anodizing is done in the UK and the laser engraving is done by BDH themselves. So these aren't mass produced units in a factory. Each one is hand built and tested by BDH, and it shows the build quality is excellent. And because they do it all themselves and know their product, they offer a lifetime warranty. Now obviously there's going to be certain conditions, and one of them will undoubtedly be that it's got to be used as intended. But they've obviously got faith in what they've got. Now, onto performance. which I've got to be honest, surprised me a little bit. So I started testing the shifter a few days before I spoke to BDH further to find out what they'd done, what they'd changed. And when I put it on the rig for the first time, immediately it just felt much more slick. So you can still adjust the resistance of the shift with the dial on top of the shifter to find that sweet spot. The shift is positive and feels just like a proper H pattern shifter. So for me, a definite improvement in feel compared to the original. No misshifts, apart from when I didn't drive properly. No software needed, just plug and play. Now, onto price and value for money. So as you can imagine, for a shifter which is made in relatively small numbers, assembled by hand in the UK, isn't going to be cheap. But it's cheaper than the original Bazooka. This shifter will set you back £695 plus VAT. Now, I've spoken to Dave, and because they're making more shifters, they can buy the components in bigger quantities, which obviously costs less. But instead of making more profit, they've reduced the price, passing on those savings to us. Now, not many companies genuinely do that. So who is this shifter for? Well, it's not going to be for everyone, and a lot of people will be content with using a H-pattern shifter very occasionally and will settle for a cheaper alternative just to do the job. But I see the shifter for a car guy, somebody who's driven H-pattern shifters in real life and wants to experience that feeling in the simulator without compromise. So would I buy one with my own money? Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I tested the original Bazooka shifter, and that was on loan at the time, but it never went back. I bought it. This is better than the original, uses better components than the original, and it's cheaper than the original. So if you drive cars with a H-pattern shifter or want to drive cars with a H-pattern shifter, this would be right up your street. So what I'm going to say now isn't about the shifter, but I want to say it anyway. So I've been fortunate enough to deal with many brands whilst doing my thing on this little YouTube channel. But BDH are a small family-run business and by far some of the nicest, hard-working people who genuinely care about what they're selling. I just wanted to mention that because sometimes the people behind the product are just as important as the product itself. So I'll leave a link down below in the video description to the BDH website. No hard sell, no affiliate links. If you buy one, you'll love it. If you don't, it's no skin off my nose. As always, thanks for watching. Have a great week. See you later. Cheers.